All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another Front Office Sports webinar tonight. I'm Adam, CEO of FOS, and want to welcome you to tonight's event, Establishing a Career in Esports, presented by our friends at the University of Miami. We've got a great discussion coming from you tonight, but before we begin, a few housekeeping items. On the right side of the screen, you'll see a few tabs. We invite you to drop your name, company, and your favorite video game in the chat as we get started tonight. You'll also see a Q&A tab where we invite you to post questions throughout the discussion. We'll try to answer all of them, but if we run out of time, we'll provide an answer via email. So let's get to it. The world of sports is constantly evolving as technology continues to advance, everything from the way in which we consume sports to the way organizations manage their operation behind the scenes changes with it. This is to be expected. One unexpected change to the sports landscape as a result of such technological advancement, however, is the rise of esports. In today's webinar, we'll discuss the global phenomenon of esports and how the University of Miami's Global Esports Management course is educating students on the opportunity the industry presents. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our panel, Mr. John Gracom, VP for Misfits Gaming. Thanks for joining us, John.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And Dr. Warren Wisnant, who's the chair of the Kinesiology and Sports Sciences Department at the University of Miami, who is joining us via audio as he's having a little bit of video difficulties tonight. But he's still here, and he's going to be able to provide us some great insights and analysis. So let's begin by taking a closer look at the state of the esports industry. I think a lot of people who are familiar with esports know that it is growing in popularity, but may not realize just how much potential there is from a business standpoint. Where are we now, and what does the future hold? John, I'll kick that to you first.
Sure thing. So, I mean, the industry as a whole has been growing substantially. I mean, talking specifically from a team and team org perspective, we were founded in the summer of 2016, and I was first hired in November of 2017. I think we had about a dozen full-time staff at the time. And now I think we just crossed over 50 full-time staff, and that's non-competitive. So not including our players and coaches and managers, or players and coaches. So like just within our organization, we've seen a huge growth in terms of the number of marketing and sales and partnerships people that we work with, and they come from everywhere from entry-level positions out of school to folks who have worked in the entertainment and media industry for 20 years. Our content creation and distribution group is massive. That's probably massive, but that's probably 15 to 20 people in our organization work on video production, social media management, and community organization. So that's a big part of what we do. And then event production is another big area. And, we have our own in-house event team, but that's one where there are a number of third parties, not to mention league operated event groups that are major employers within the industry. So just from the competitive esports world, I mean, there's been a lot of growth in all those areas, and that doesn't touch on the developer industry, parts of the industry that I deal with, but I don't hire for. So
it's wide ranging, right? It seems, right? It's just like sports. Everyone, originally everyone wanted to be the Jerry Maguire and wanted to be an agent and everything like that. But what you just lined out is esports, from developer to product to team to organization, is just as expansive as almost any other industry, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun to think of ourselves as modeled after some of the teams that we work with down here in Florida, like the Heat and the Magic, and we know their staff reasonably well, and so we kind of get to steal their good ideas and use them ourselves.
Awesome, love it, Warren. From an education perspective, would love to have your thoughts on just the overall growth of esports at large.
Yeah, the industry, this past year posted over $1 billion in revenue and expected over the next 3 years to get up to $1.5 billion. And they had nearly 500 million viewers and fans that are involved too. So from a sport segment, it is huge and it continues to grow. We've got a lot of interest from our students in courses. In fact, the National Association for Collegiate Esports has 170 member schools with varsity teams, with over 500 or 5,000 student athletes. And this segment of the sport industry just continues to grow at a very rapid rate. In fact, from a viewership, League of Legends, their past competitions, championships drew more viewers than the Super Bowl did. It definitely has an international component to it. I think the State Department now actually issues esport visas, and you can actually get a green card and come into the United States to work. So it's continues to grow tremendously.
Basically, what you're both saying is esports is here to stay, right? Esports is not going away. It's something that is now, basically you can say almost mainstream. And I would love to talk about what that means from an opportunity standpoint. I know we're here to talk about how to get a career and establishing a career in esports for those of us who are already established in a career, maybe transitioning into a career in esports. So, now that we've established that and there's a significant growth opportunity and the potential it presents, we'd love to talk about the opportunities out there. So, John, I'll go back to you. Obviously, you're hiring and your type of hire is a little bit different, but would love to get some ideas of different career paths, whether yourself took, some of the people that you've taken, that have hired, have taken, other people when it comes to esports, and then Warren, we'll bounce back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start this out with a very quick story. I've always been a huge sports fan and video games fan, and but when I came out of college, I was in school in Minnesota, and I went to a career day hosted by the Minnesota Vikings and Minnesota Twins, and that was my dream. It's like, if I could get a job for one of these teams, that would be amazing. And what I learned that day, which kind of stuck with me, is that there are so many different active groups within one of these organizations, whether it be an esports team or a game developer or even an events operator. Like having a skill set within a field that you can develop really anywhere, in school or in a career outside of sports or entertainment, really gives you a great advantage on breaking into the scene. So for my own example, I'm a graduate of Northwestern Law. I worked for a firm in Silicon Valley for a couple of years before I ended up getting hired in this role. And my law background essentially got me the job that I came in with. And the fact that I had been able to work with startup companies, the fact that I was a huge fan of competitive gaming, both kind of came together, along with my experience just working in the legal industry, to get me where I am today. And that's true of a decent number of our hires. In the sales side, like, we tend to hire people with some degree of experience and some kind of sales relationships, and that now can come from pretty much anywhere. I mean, one of the more interesting areas of growth and more exciting areas of growth as we continue to move forward is that, maybe 15 years ago, the only advertisers and sponsors that you'd see at big events are Intel, Scuf, what you call endemic sponsors in the industry. And now, like, MasterCard is has been a big sponsor of Riot Games and League of Legends. And you see lots and lots of more sponsors. Our biggest sponsor at Misfits Gaming is a company called SoFi, which is a financial company. And so we really kind of can pull from anywhere to hire. And it comes down to passion for gaming is key. And then what kind of skill set do you bring for the necessary role? But, we've got PR people, we've got HR people, we've got sales team, we've got content creators and community managers. So there are lots of different skill sets that can translate to the industry.
Excellent. Warren, where are you seeing the most growth from, whether it's your graduate students or people you've placed or just at large and some of the people you're speaking with?
Well, I mean, the more I've gotten into this, the more I realize that I mean, just like any segment within the sport industry, the skills transfer from one particular arena to another, and whether it's marketing, media relations, public relations, event management, all those same skill sets that are necessary in the traditional sport environment are transferable over to esports, which makes it an exciting new growth area for people that are interested in getting into this arena. And one of the things now we're seeing, we're starting to get students that are interested in doing internships with the organizations, and it's one of the key areas that we're focusing on now. We're visiting with La Liga. They're looking to get into the esports arena. So I mean, it is really much bigger than just one particular segment. It continues to grow.
So, I mean, essentially what we're talking about is like as long as you have a skill in something, there could be a role for you in esports, right? Obviously, John, you mentioned it was law. How much does an esports background matter when it comes to hiring? I'm assuming an interest in video games matters, but when it comes to specifically on your team, John, hiring, how much are you guys looking for? And I'm assuming depends on the position, true esports endemic experience.
Yeah, it does depend on the position, and in almost every case, we're kind of lucky to be in a field where there are lots of people who want to get involved, because we set ourselves, we kind of set the requirement that whoever we hire has to be passionate about gaming in some form. So that's it's something that we self kind of select for, but it's not. It certainly doesn't make or break the success of somebody who's that kind of any specific experience doesn't necessarily mean that person is going to be great for us or better than somebody who has worked for 5 years in some other field and built up different relationships. So.
Yeah, excellent. Warren, would love to kind of take a second here and chat about the, obviously the program, the Esports Management program, very, new for the most part in terms of like actual schools having a program dedicated to this. I'd love to get an understanding about the course itself, something that the students can get an understanding of like what they would be involved in, those who have joined us here today, even potential faculty members, just the overall kind of nuts and bolts of this course.
Well, I mean, it shows that there's interest everywhere. Just looking at the list of people that are signing in that are faculty at other universities, it continues to grow. Well, what we did is we put together 5 modules. It starts with an introduction to esports, and then we go through and we take 4 key areas: marketing and data analysis, sponsorships, event management, and then communications and media relations. And what we do is we spend time, the faculty spend time talking about those particular areas from an academic standpoint. And then the key for us with this was to transition that into esports and show how these the basic skills from a sport management program are transferable in. In order to do that, we invited 5 subject matter experts from the industry to come in. And the faculty, after they talk about the academic side, we interview them and actually go through and make the connections so that we can show people how those same skills transition into this particular industry. So it's a good, I think, basic starting point to identify how the basic skills are still transferable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about basic skills, John. Basic skills mean what when it comes to succeeding in esports? Obviously, again, position-wise, it is dependent, but overall, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think in almost every case, somebody who's organized is hugely important. I think kind of understanding what I think is super helpful about a program like Warren is describing is it really helps to understand kind of where a role exists within the larger picture of what's trying to be produced or created. And so somebody coming in saying, oh yeah, like I'm hired for this role and I like who, what other roles will I be working with? Oh, I kind of understand what their job is too, so I know how to help them or what I can ask them for. That's a really nice skill set to have coming into pretty much any role.
Excellent. I appreciate that. So, when we talk about roles, we talk about jobs, we talk about esports, we talk about the growth of esports. What's the next 2.0 of esports, right? And I'll kick this back to you, John, and then go to Warren about this. But the opportunities, what jobs is it the metaverse? And what does that mean for esports when Fortnite is already kind of the metaverse? Are we looking at different roles, right? I don't know. I'm assuming, for you, John, you've been in the industry a little bit now. It's changed probably drastically just the amount of the time that you've been here. So what do we think the biggest change is going to happen? And what are some of the skills that we can prepare or that those who are joining us can potentially prepare to leverage?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things has been accelerated a lot in the past couple of years, and that's the growth of esports and any kind of media and entertainment property as a digital property versus kind of something that's traditionally distributed or a live event. And I think understanding digital event production and how those kind of media rights can be pieced up and distributed is going to really kind of guide the growth of esports and I think lots of forms of media over the next few years.
Excellent. Warren, on your side.
Well, I think expanding the courses in these areas that really specialize in esports in each of the particular areas. That's one of the reasons why sport management itself kind of broke out from the regular business schools and those types of things to be specialized, just like hospitality management. You have courses and degrees in gaming. You're going to see, I think, more and more universities looking at esports as an opportunity to offer a degree in esports specifically in that particular area. And we're already seeing it now in some universities. And I think one of the interesting things that I'm finding too is where is it going to be located in a university? I mean, students are going to have to kind of search it out and find it. I mean, when I look here at the list of people here, whether it's in the arts and sciences area, is it in the business school, is it in the School of Education? That may be one of the challenges for the students is to figure out where it is on campus and where to find it. The opportunities, particularly with an introductory course, lets people that may not even consider this segment, for instance, athletic trainers, and nutritionists. Just like a profession, any professional sport organization, they're going to be, those types of positions available also in the marketplace. So it's going to be wide open, and I think it opens up an entire new career area for students and people wanting to make a transition.
Yeah, and if I can just follow up on that, I think that's, Warren, that's a really important point that I didn't touch on. So I'm glad you focused on it. But yeah, I think education and kind of skills development and competition at the schools level is a huge area of development of esports over the next few years. We're already seeing a lot of that start to happen, but that's going to change the game for us as an organization as we get players, potential hires, people come up with a much more sophisticated understanding of the game with years of being coached and being parts of teams. And that's, I'm very excited about that development.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a question in the chat. And for those who are joining us and who have been here, love to have any more questions that you may have as we reach kind of the midpoint here of our 45 minutes together tonight. So if you have any other questions, feel free to jump in. This is more tactical, I would say. Matthew Kimball asks, and I'll kick it to you, John, first, but as you see sponsorship grow more and more in esports competition, when will developers begin to work with potential sponsors and adding signage, etc., embedded in-game during broadcasted matches?
Yep. Great question. And that's already started happening in some competitions. Riot has used in-game signage for sponsors in some of its broadcasts. I'm not sure specifically which ones, but I know some sponsors have appeared on the League of Legends map in the game during the broadcast. I want to say Rocket League has done that as well. Call of Duty League last year had sponsors on player jerseys. There were sponsor patches in the game on player jerseys. So it's definitely happening, and I think you'll continue to see it happen. Development teams will get more creative. It's all because these are all kind of developed by their respective IP holders. Like it's up to the ultimate decision of the publishers and developers, kind of what's kosher and what's not. But yeah, I expect you'll see a lot more.
Awesome. Warren, any perspective on your side from the people you've been speaking with around sponsorship integration when it comes to esports?
Well, it's like anything else. I mean, find out demographics, find out where the audience is, and then convince or actually show the sponsors that not only do you have regional reach, you can also have a global presence. And in many instances, you're going to reach far more people than you would, say, with stadium naming rights. I mean, if you take $24 million, I would imagine, and took it to Misfits to sponsor, with their performance in the arena, I mean, you're going to get a lot of exposure and a lot of consumer interest.
Yeah, absolutely, and appreciate that perspective, and have a bunch of different people in a variety of different areas here. And I know we've talked a little bit and we hinted at it. Obviously, the metaverse is the hot new word. John, I have no idea what's going on in the metaverse, to be honest with you. You may know more. I don't know, I just saw something today about Tinder is talking about dating in the metaverse. Microsoft has PowerPoint and Excel. I'm just like, can we just have normal life back in regular life first and regular verse? But would love to get a sense from you, just kind of what that potentially is coming down the pipe. Is there opportunities? Is that something that those here who are students should be preparing for?
I mean, I think that ties back a little bit to the last question, which is we've seen a huge audience skew towards interaction digitally in a lot of different ways. And and I think for a lot of reasons, it's much simpler for people. It's much easier to engage that way, especially if you've grown up with the internet. And so yeah, I mean, I think there will be a lot of use and a lot of exploration of what kinds of digital interactions should exist, can exist, and are effective.
Love it. We have a great question here from Owen. I'm going to come right back to you, John, because he's directly asking about Misfits at large. But he asks, about collegiate esports, do you think that Misfits or other esports industries going to sponsor and create events for colleges to show off esports and the growing scene?
Yeah. So I guess this can be a quick plug. We have an event coming up on the 13th called the College Tour. And as of now, it's only one live event activation, but it's here in Boca Raton at the Boca Raton Innovation Campus on November 13th. And it's going to be a day of speakers and targeted toward college and high school students who are interested in getting involved in esports. So totally encourage anybody in the area to come check that out. In terms of competition, I mean, we definitely have talked to and worked with a bunch of different colleges, primarily here in Florida, although we've also worked with colleges around the country to put on events. I want to say we've done probably half a dozen or so tournaments or show matches or other kind of competitions at college campuses. We do a lot of watch parties and things like that with interested groups. So yeah, I mean, colleges are great. There are a lot of people on college campuses. A lot of them play video games, and it's a good place to reach out to potential fans. So 100%.
Yeah, if I can add something there, Adam, too, as far as college athletic departments, for about 4 or 5 years, I served on the athletics committee for our faculty senate. And one of the questions I would ask every year of the athletic director is when is the athletic department going to embrace esports and get it in system? As soon as they can uh, establish a revenue stream from that sport, it'll be there. Once they recognize that there's a huge upside potential. I think we have over 300 students on campus that are involved in these sports. So, I mean, there certainly is an interest, both from males and females. So it could help them with Title IX. It could help them with the revenue stream as well. So that I suspect will be the next area where most colleges will really branch out.
Definitely. And we talked about programs, but even scholarships for those who are students or looking potentially to go back to school. Is there esports specific scholarships? Does Misfit offer work scholarship type opportunity? We'd love to talk about that as well, because I'm assuming, when you talk about education, the usual likely next subject is talking about costs and opportunities in which that cost can get underwritten.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've discussed. We haven't put in place a formal policy for it yet, but it's absolutely on our radar, especially as we see a lot of leagues going to an 18-year-old mandatory age, 18 or above mandatory player age. We see a lot of people finish up high school, and then if they've got the chops, they'll go play for a league team. And I think it makes total sense for an organization like ours to support those players going back to school whenever they decide that their career with us is done. So I think there definitely is a place for that as far as team-run scholarship programs. And then Warren may know more than I do, but I do know that there are schools with that offer scholarships to esports players as well. I'm not sure what the number is, though.
Yeah, there are some that do, and I think there's going to be an opportunity also for, from an educational standpoint, for universities to partner with organizations to allow their students and their athletes to go to school online as well. So that way, John, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the average age for esports professionals is close to 24 or so, like that, right? So just like professional sports, it can be an early exit from that area. So having your degree in hand and ready to move into an administrative or into the business side of the sport would be very, very helpful, I think, for a lot of students.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have about 15 minutes of discussion left here. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the tab. We'd love to continue to answer most of them. And then we've talked about a little bit about scholarship. We've talked a little bit about program. We've talked a little bit about career experiences and desires. What at the high end, right, is the opportunity? Everyone wants to talk about, I want a career in esports. But then the next question is, what's the growth opportunity? What's next? Where am I going to go? And so we'd love to talk about that. Okay, you start a career in esports. Where is the opportunity to grow from there? Obviously, if you go to the NFL, hey, I'm a coordinator, I'm going to be a manager, I'm going to be a senior manager, I'm going to be a director, and I could eventually probably be a VP or whatever it is like that. Standard in esports, John, different from an organizational structure standpoint, and kind of really what is the upside from a career in potentially esports?
Yeah, I think what you described is standard at a little bit of a shrunk scale now, but I think that it depends what kind of timeline you're operating on, right? I think that it's the history of esports has been so compressed that there was kind of the expectation that you could get in and kind of advance really quickly, and teams were run either kind of in a flat way where everybody had a lot of input, or teams were small enough that one person moves on to some other project, you become the head of that part of what the team is doing. And as companies like Misfits kind of build out around longer term opportunities and around larger staffs within our various processes within our various teams. I think that today, if we hire somebody, like when I think of what I'm doing over the next, over the course of my career, like I can be here for 25 years, and there are a couple of roles that I may move into over that time, but it's something where I don't think I would have a substantially greater opportunity to advance if I were to transition to definitely an MLS team, NHL team, baseball team, like where as long as I'm considering this my career, like I'm happy where I am, and I think that the growth opportunity is big enough that like, it's going to be a great role and company to be a part of for a long time.
Awesome. Excellent. We have some really good questions coming in here, so I'd love to address them both from Avery and then following up with Hong. From Avery, he's mentioned, I'm currently doing lots of part-time work at amateur esports organization, also working as the captain of the university's Valorant team. Where does the line get drawn for experience versus schoolwork? I feel like the degree doesn't really give you the qualifications for an esports job now that I have over the year experience in the AM scene. So John and Warren, I'll turn that over to both of you. Maybe John first.
Well, I mean, I would say that from a just a degree, yes, I would pretty much agree with that. I mean, experience is very, very important. That's why one of the things we require students to do is a lot of internship, a lot of volunteer activities, specifically in the area that you're interested in doing. While you're in school, that does give you the opportunity to get active and get involved through internships, because that way you can find out whether or not that really is an industry that you're interested in. And also by visiting different organizations, you'll find what area within an organization you're most interested in. So I think without a doubt, the experience through internships is very, very important. And having the degree just kind of puts the icing on the cake, I guess, whenever you're ready to go out and look for a position.
Excellent. John, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right on. I'll say in terms of a degree, I think the biggest positives of a degree, and I don't know, like a college degree is great. I think it is valuable. And I think coming in to an organization like ours, it sets kind of a baseline understanding that, you're committed to this kind of work. You have a work ethic that's been developed through dealing with college programs and turning in final papers and all that stuff. And it means, I would expect somebody with an esports particular degree or a degree that's focused on esports in whatever way you can in school, to come in with kind of a general knowledge of a lot of the things that we do, maybe not everything, but a lot, which, like I said, I think is really positive for somebody starting in the industry. But I totally agree with Warren, and the best experience is direct experience doing the thing that you want to be doing. So, captaining your Valorant team, working with an amateur esports organization, I mean, those are both amazing parts of a resume that I think are going to be super valuable for you.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add that, if you're a student and selecting a program, I think a program that has an internship coordinator is extremely important there. Our internship coordinator through our Facebook page, we has postings every week from all the different industries. But I mean, he's very active working with esports organizations as well, getting people involved and in the pipeline so that they can get that experience.
Excellent. A ton of great questions coming in. We have about 10 more minutes, so I'm going to try to get to them all, but really appreciate all of those who are asking. We're going to go to Hong and then Andrew and then Lynn as we have time. Hong says, what is some great reading material, virtual or physical, to learn more about the esports industry and pick up future trends? Is there a quote unquote Bible for the esports industry that you would encourage everyone to read?
That's a hard one for me to say right now, because it's still such a new industry. I mean, I know there are a couple of textbooks that are out on esports. So I think you just have to go in and look for as much as you can. If you're looking for scientific type activity, Google Scholar is a good place to go in if you want to pull up actual academic studies as they relate to esports. And from my perspective, that's where I'd be going as an academic.
Yeah, thanks for it. I'm trying to think through my answer too. And I think, Google Scholar is actually a really good resource I wouldn't have thought of, but I think you're right. That's a good place to go. There are a lot of organizations like Front Office Sports, for example, who do research on kind of marketing trends and business trends within the industry, and looking for those kind of data-based reports can be really helpful. That can be helpful in some ways. And I think it's tricky. Like Warren said, it's the industry is continuing to change and evolve pretty quickly. So, like I said, something that was written in 2017 would be hard to apply. It would be hard to apply to us today, I think, in a lot of ways. And so yeah, there's not something that has stood the test of time, I would say, as the Bible of esports.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And as you mentioned, it's new, right? Like there's so much going on, so much changing. It's hard to quote unquote be the Bible of anything, just when such a new and nascent industry. So we're going to go to Andrew, and I think this is, this is back to you, John, and maybe a Warren on your end. But how are the relationships between healthcare professionals, physical therapy, in his case, and esports teams built and maintained? It seems like Andrew would probably take a interest in what would be like physical therapy for esports teams, and I know there is even partnerships with the Hyper Ices of the world that some of these esports teams are focused on from a health and wellness standpoint.
Yeah. I'd say there's a fair share of teams that have a distinct health and wellness group within the organization. We do here. I will say that it is generally more focused on mental and emotional health than it is on physical health, although we have physical health programs for our teams. There are a handful of kind of third-party physical therapists who focus on gaming. I would suggest just doing a Google search for them. Kate McGee, Dr. Kate McGee is one of them. And I'm blanking on a couple of other names, but there are people who've been kind of working with the industry for a long time, trying to instill best practices and contracting with teams to be focused specifically on their team. There have been people who've transitioned from traditional sports to esports to work with teams. So it's something that exists. I'd say it's not a huge set of people who are actively kind of practicing it full time for the industry. And for example, for us, we don't work with a full-time physical therapist because we have found that kind of once you set up an effective program for the players, there's not a lot of day-to-day requirements of the trainer or physical therapist. So we tend to kind of contract with somebody, work to set up a good program, and then kind of run that ourselves. But it's definitely a field that has a bearing on esports competition. And if it's something that you're interested in and focus on, you can absolutely have an impact on individual players and teams in the industries.
Awesome. As we were talking about, right? Wide ranging. There's wide ranging opportunities. It's just like anything else, right? Where there's physical activity, there's for physical therapists. Where there's audience, there's need for sponsorship sellers, right? So it's kind of one to one. As we get into the final few minutes here, this is probably going to be the last question, and I think this is a good one to really end on from Lynn. She says, for people who have already entered the workforce in careers not typically represented in esports, what advice would you have to then shift to a career in esports, or how would you pitch, or how would one pitch to orgs this career incorporating the past experience, example being careers in academia? Warren, I'll kick it over to you first, and then John, I'll let you take us home.
Well, I think one way that if you're in academia now and you have students that are interested in esports, then you be the internship coordinator. You develop those relationships with sport organizations. You start feeding those people to those organizations, and then you're going to have high value, and you establish those relationships, and then make the move. So, I mean, if you're not in sport at all, then look within your current organization to see if your current organization is involved in esports in any way, and if they're not, then perhaps you want to try to get involved. In my case, I worked for Frito-Lay before I got into academia, and I wanted to get into sports. So the way I got actively involved is through sponsorships, and then I was able to develop relationships there, and realized that I wanted to go into academia from that standpoint. So there are a lot of different ways I think you can do it, and build those relationships. So,
yeah. I think that's a great point. I mean, I'm reminded kind of how famously the development team that ran World of Warcraft was headed up by like PhDs in biology and I forget what other sciences, but like definite academic people were eventually kind of handed the reins of World of Warcraft, a massive gaming title. So there's a way to do it. I think, for me, I was not very creative. I was working for my law firm, and I saw a couple of other lawyers who were getting involved in esports. I said, I'm a lawyer. I like esports. Maybe I can do this. But yeah, I mean, as somebody in academia, I mean, I think my best advice, which I unfortunately I think is not very specifically good, but hopefully is general enough to apply, is just think about a skill set that you've developed in academia, whether it be kind of managing different personalities, whether it be something about how you've organized class, something about how you've researched topics, and play around with what those could do for some group within the esports industry, whether it's a team, a developer, an events operator, anybody. Like that's ultimately, if you've been a professional for a little while, you've developed some kind of core skill set, whether on purpose or by accident, just by doing it a whole bunch. And so that's something in there can be a real plus for other industries as you look at transitioning over.
Awesome. Excellent. I think that's a great note to end on as we're at time here. I think Owen mentioned, and a few others have mentioned, is it possible to get both of yours emails? I don't know if we're sharing it, but if you would, just feel free to share it in the chat there. And for everyone who's been listening, I really appreciate the time, the questions, the engagement. It's been great to have you all here. If you didn't notice, I shared a little bit about the Global Esports Management Program course at the University of Miami in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to check that out. And obviously as well, there is emails coming to you. And if you need anything else, this will be and is recorded. So for those of you who have seen or came a little bit later and want to rewatch it or whatever it is, you'll get an email with the recording in it and have the opportunity to tune in. And for those who didn't and who'll be tuning in later, they'll be getting it as well. But really appreciate everyone joining you, John, Warren. Really appreciate you guys for joining us this evening. And for everyone else, hopefully you'll have a good rest of your evening and a good rest of your week. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Warren.